Well, hello there, friends. It's Nina. Thanks so much for joining me today for a new tutorial. I have 3 different techniques that I'm going to be sharing with you today using the new Spring BOHO Circle Stencil from Simon Says Stamp. These are 3 of some of my most favorite stenciling techniques. And why I wanted to show you 3 of them is because I want to demonstrate how versatile stencils can be. Even just this single stencil alone made 3 cards that are totally unique. The different techniques allow you to play with different mediums, and you also get to experiment how a stencil can be used and changed to fit the card that you're going to be creating. I also encourage you to stay tuned to the end of the video because I have a bonus technique using another stencil from Simon Says Stamp's Hello Beautiful release that I think you're going to have fun watching and trying out yourself. So today's techniques all feature this Spring BOHO stencil, which is from the Simon Says Stamp Hello Beautiful release. The first technique we're going to dive into is what I call color wheel blending. This is a fun technique because you can do this with any stencil you have, and what you're going to do is you're going to turn the design into a color wheel. Now this just happens to be a circle stencil, but I've done this with square designs too. You don't need any fancy supplies for this. All you need are some blending tools and some masking tape. So I have a piece of white cardstock here that I'm covering with the stencil, and now I'm also attaching masking tape over top of the stencil, and I'm segmenting my stencil into sections. These sections are going to be our color wheel. Now you could add as many segments that you want. I'm going to do 8 different segments of color for my color wheel today because I want a nice good rainbow. But again, you can customize this to whatever design you want. I'm going to start off with some Distress Oxide ink in Wilted Violet, and I'll use these blending applicator brushes from iCrafter, and I'm going to carefully start blending on color into one of my segments that I've created with my masking tape. I'm being careful not to go outside of this particular segment, and I'm going to peel back the tape once I have completed the first segment of masking. I do like to try to reuse as much of my tape as possible, so I will wipe off any excess ink to make sure that I don't contaminate the next color that I'm going to bring in for the next segment. So because I want to create another segment here, I'm going to cover over the masking that we just did so that I don't contaminate that particular segment, and we'll repeat the process. So now I'll work with blue. This happens to be Salty Ocean. And I'll blend on this beautiful color, creating a second segment for my color wheel. And I'm going to repeat this all the way around my paper. So we'll remove the masking tape again, reapply another piece, covering over the previous segment, and we're going to continue all the way around. This is so much fun and so simple to do. I really love doing this with all sorts of designs. And like I said, you don't have to use a circle. I just happen to be using a circle stencil today because I love this stencil. It's so pretty. But this will work with whatever stencils you have. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I also really love being able to use these little applicator tools. These are a brush applicator, so you've got that nice fingertip control, but the bristles are nice and soft, so they really push the ink around nicely and gently on your stencil, and you get into all those little tiny detail areas. Because we're doing masking with this technique, it gets right up to the edge beautifully with those applicators. Alright, so we're almost done blending around our color wheel, and you can see how this came together really simply, and it's so bright and fun. And my favorite part is taking off all the masking tape and revealing the gorgeous design that's left behind. So I ended up actually making 2 of these backgrounds because this technique is literally so much fun, it's addicting. And here's how I ended up using these backgrounds. For my first card, I stamped a flower image from the Best Friend Ever stamp set, colored it with Copic markers, added a greeting from the new Easter sentiment strips from Simon Says Stamp's Hello Beautiful collection, and a few sequins were a perfect finishing touch. My second card is actually a baby card. I used the Sketched Iris stamp set, and I stamped the flower and also the coordinating coloring pieces with Distress Oxide ink. Those created a beautiful toned iris, which I layered on top of the background with a couple of sentiments. One happens to be from the new Welcoming stamp set, and I also tucked a small baby sentiment strip from another new sentiment strip set from Simon Says Stamp, and a few sequins completed this card too. Alright, so that was technique number 1. That was color wheel blending. Let's move on to the second technique, which happens to be alcohol lift ink stenciling. So I have an alcohol ink background here that I had created previously and set aside for use on another card, which happens to be today. I'm going to pull out my stencil and line it up on top of my background and tape it in place so it doesn't move. Once I have my stencil attached onto my card, we're ready to start blending. But we're not blending with just any ink. We're going to be using alcohol lift ink. My cat Oscar was extremely interested in what was going on here. I have my applicator tool, which has a foam blender attached to it, and I'm going to pick up lift ink and brush it on top of my stencil, which is lifting off the ink through the negative areas. So once we apply this lift ink over top of this entire stencil, you're not seeing a whole lot right now, but just wait for the magic. I let that dry for a few minutes and then I came in with a soft cloth. With this cloth, I'm going to buff off the ink, and this is revealing that beautiful stencil design over top of my alcohol ink background. Isn't this stunning? So you could do this with whatever alcohol ink backgrounds you have on hand. Now check it out. This is the alcohol lift ink pattern on the left, and we have our color wheel blending on the right. Totally different looks, same stencil. But we're not done yet. We're going to do this again, this time a third technique, which happens to be foiling. I'm going to be using this stencil along with some transfer gel from Thermoweb. I'm going to apply the gel through the stencil. This is basically a paste. I'll carefully apply this down, blend it out nice and smooth, a nice thin layer. I don't want it too thick, and I'll lift off my stencil to reveal that beautiful pattern on my card. This happens to be a mini slimline panel. I let that dry overnight, and you can see it's totally clear, which means it is dry. I am pulling out some foil now. This happens to be from Gina K Designs, and I'm going to lay my paper on top of that foil so I can trim it down to size. This is going to go inside of a sandwich made from parchment paper and a few layers of plain cardstock. That will allow me to run this through my laminator. If you've never foiled before, be sure to check out the video I'm adding onto the screen right now for you to see. So here is my foiled background completed. I love how this turns out. Gave another totally different look to our stencil. Now another trick I want to show you is that if you do get any foil on areas that you don't want to have foil, just pull out a sand eraser and rub off that extra foil. This will come off really easily and you'll never notice that you had a little boo-boo. So here now are our three backgrounds. Completely different, totally unique, and all use the same spring boho stencil from Simon Says Stamp. Now let me show you how I finished off the other two cards that you haven't seen yet. So the first one with the alcohol lift ink background, I used a Simon Says Stamp sentiment which says, "Lucky to know you." It's an older sentiment, but I love this one. And I thought it would look really nice with the green, kind of go for a St. Patrick's Day kind of look. I also paired it with some of the new Lucky sequins from Simon's Hello Beautiful release and a gold heart. And then for my mini slimline foiled card, I pulled out the new beautiful die set, which happens to be a word and shadow die. I cut the word beautiful from some silver mirror cardstock, paired it with a sentiment, which goes with the coordinating slimline beautiful stamp set, and that happens to be stamped and embossed in the new cream embossing powder from Simon Says Stamp. I love that embossing powder. It's so nice and so unique. Different than white embossing powder. It goes really well with something that you don't want to have that bright white greeting. This is nice and soft and it just looks so beautiful. My final embellishment for this card were a few sparkly silver gems. Alright, so I promised that I have a final technique, bonus technique. I love stenciling so much, and I had another idea using one of the other new stencils from the Hello Beautiful release. Now I didn't have time to turn this into a finished card yet, but this technique was so cool I didn't want to miss sharing it. So this is Distress Oxide blending with a glitter overlay. I'm starting with this Mix and Match Circles stencil from Simon Says Stamp's Hello Beautiful release, and I'm blending Distress Oxide ink over top of it. I used Kitsch Flamingo, Wild Honey, Twisted Citron, Peacock Feathers, and Wilted Violet. I love this color combination. It's so beautiful and it creates a gorgeous rainbow. So I'm quickly blending these ink colors over the background. This is just step one out of this whole technique. Once we've applied the ink and blended our beautiful background, we're not going to remove the stencil. We're going to leave it on still. we're going to pull out some transparent paste. Now you can use matte, gloss, whichever kind you prefer. I believe mine happens to be matte. I'm going to apply this paste in a thin layer over top of our entire background here. So I've not removed the stencil yet. I'm just applying the paste over top of the blending we've already done. I'll use a stencil pal to go ahead and kind of smooth out the blending a little bit more and get things nice and smooth. And we're ready to add the overlay. I love being able to add glitter to almost anything I can get my hands on. So I just removed the stencil, the paste is still wet, and we're going to bring in some Simon Says Stamp Unicorn Dust Glitter to sprinkle over top of this background. Now I'm only using my fingertips to just sprinkle gently over the stencil. I don't want to cover the entire thing because I also want to bring in more glitter, and this one happens to be unicorn confetti. I'm applying both of these glitters with my fingertips. It gets a little messy, but I don't mind, and I really like the look this provides. It's not a heavy amount of glitter, it's just a small amount that provides a little bit of sparkle. And when this dries, this creates the most stunning glitter background ever. I love it. So I'll be using this on a card coming really soon, but I wanted to share the technique because it's too much fun to not try out. So I hope you will try out one or all of these techniques that I've shared today. They're all so much fun and can be done with any stencils that you have in your stash. So be sure to check out the cards that I made using these backgrounds and also the new products from Simon's Hello Beautiful release. All that information can be found over on my blog, which I have linked below. And I'm also participating in a blog hop today. So if you would like to see additional inspiration using the new Hello Beautiful release, you definitely want to stop by and get more information on that. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching today's video and subscribing to my channel. If you haven't already done so, I would love to have you be a subscriber. I will see you all again very soon with more inspiration. But until next time, I hope you have a very wonderful day. Bye!